Lee, we are back again with the most sophisticated broadcast from inside a Ford Escape. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Jason?
I'm really well, and I'm glad that you are joining me because I think a lot of people are intrigued by this truly brutal crime. Everybody heard, I think, that Ukraine has taken credit for basically assassinating this Russian. Oh, wait, this thing is talking, sorry.
That's right. Igor Kirillov.
Right. He's been murdered. It's terrible.
No,
Tell
he
us about
has,
it.
and because I do the legacy media roundups that I do, where I look at the news from Fox, uh, NPR, DW, BBC, and ABC every day. I've noticed the mainstream media was covering this. This is the top story on a number of outlets yesterday. So it is making news, but it making news is kind of my feeling is like a limited hangout.
What do you mean? Why a limited hangout?
Well, because like uh, if like they're reporting this, so there's no question there was a bomb. This guy's dead, right? That's
Yeah.
what's not in dispute.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, so to use an analogy, imagine you heard a story and you heard a hero was killed. Like that's different than if you heard a villain was killed. And if you don't know who the guy is,
Right.
it's just a name. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So they're vaguely reporting who Kilmakov is. They're saying he was in charge of Russia's bioweapons. I forget how they phrase it exactly, but like they make it sound like he's a bioweapons guy from Russia. Now, do you
Right.
know who he is?
Well, the New York Times has a thing here that says that, among other tasks, General Igor Kirillov oversaw the protection of Russian troops against chemical and nuclear weapons. That seems unusually honest of the New York Times, doesn't it?
Halfway. Okay, again, he's involved in that, and again, high profile. But really, he's one of the people investigating biolabs in Ukraine. He was the person with the institutional memory for that. Makes sense? He was the guy who knew the most about the bioweapons labs in Ukraine, in Russia, and possibly the world.
So killing him is going to eliminate his ability to investigate this. You know, it's interesting, Lee, because really a while ago, we did a show with John Cullen where he had recovered documents from the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. He went back in archive.org and saw, like, it was very damning stuff. It was like contracts with construction companies and requests for visas and things for certain particular doctors who were named by name. And so tell us, what are the implications of what you're saying? Because this guy has been murdered now, does this kind of somehow reduce Russia's ability to get to the bottom of whatever it is that was going on in these biological labs?
Well, let me just take it back one step. So here's the chief detective figuring out these biolabs. Now, let me ask the question, cui bono? Who benefits from this guy being killed? What did you
I
say?
think Hunter Biden, because he was involved with Metabiota.
Well, the United States in general,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
USA in general. And it does connect to Hunter Biden. But let's take it a step at a time because a lot of people would say conspiracy theory. And I like to, you know, do it in order.
Diffuse that. Yeah.
Makes sense? Step into it. So, one factor, that's why I published today a story about reminding people, because it happened a while ago, about Victoria Nuland's testimony in 2022, where she admitted to the Ukrainian biolabs being, so before
That
that,
we have them. Yeah.
before that, since 2014, the U.S. has denied, like publicly, repeatedly in the media, over and over and over, they denied that there were any biolabs. And if you brought up the term biolabs, you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay, so this is why I say sometimes limited hangouts are useful. So Victoria-Nuland admitting the existence of biolabs in Senate testimony in 2022 is very important because it's no deny, deny, deny. The analogy I've made is imagine your wife, you're a married couple, and you think your husband's having an affair with the secretary. And so he says, no, you're insane, you're insane. And then one day he says, well, okay, she did say my hotel room, but but it was innocent.
Right.
And so my point is when you deny something repeatedly, and it turns out that the complete denial was false, I think the burden of proof is on the other person to prove that you're not lying. I mean, in other words, the burden of proof shifts. At first, if you accuse somebody of something, I think the burden of proof is on you. So, but when they deny it over and over and over and over, and then admit there's some biolabs, it's probably a limited hangout. And by the way, Victoria-Nuland didn't explain why uh, the biolabs were there. She just said she was very concerned about them. So I don't think so a lot of times you'll see people in the media kind of fill in excuses for them. They'll say, well, maybe it was a health lab. Well,
Right.
Victoria Nuland didn't say that. You see what I'm saying?
Flintstones vitamins, Lee.
What's
Chewables.
that?
Flintstones chewable vitamins over there.
Right. But again, she didn't even say that. So and there's a reason. So you know, like in my example, okay, maybe the like maybe so the wife maybe has a friend, a mutual friend, and the mutual friend says, well, who knows? And it could be anything. Maybe her car broke down. Maybe
Right.
she was thrown out of her house. And the wife, I think, at that point should say, well, he didn't say that. Because here's the thing, the reason you don't say anything is because you know that if you say anything, that anything can be run down. So if he had said, well, her car broke down, she could say, okay, can I have some proof?
Well, you
Did
might
your
see her driving at the supermarket the next day and know that it was a
That's
lie.
right. So by not the tactic here is liars notice, right? If they say anything, they're kind of stepping into something that potentially can be further disproved. So what
Mhm.
they do is they just say nothing.
Hmm.
Now the other thing the Victoria-Nuland's testimony from 2022 reminded me of is how much Marco Rubio sucks.
Wait a minute. Should we listen to that testimony for a second, Lee? Do you want to actually hear it?
Yeah, yeah. Play that exchange with Rubio. Now let
Yeah.
me set up.
Yep.
I want to say something to prep people so they'll know to look for it. Marco Rubio sucks. Now, here's what I'm saying. Uh, if you're a Senate investigator and she makes a statement, you can follow it up with a useful question, such as why the biolabs there? What are they doing? Or you
Right.
can follow up with a useful question like, well, why have you denied it for years? You see, it's a good follow up question, don't you
Hmm.
think? I mean, that would be
Yeah.
the good, logical, skeptical follow up question. Here's a person with the State Department who's been lying for years to the American people about the existence of biolabs, and in fact, criticizing people as conspiracy theorists or Putin bots, right, for saying something. So
Yeah.
either of those would be an obvious question, like, okay, so you're admitting to the existence of biolabs. Why did you lie about it, right? Or it's just what are the labs doing, or what do we know? What do we know about the labs?
Hmm.
Now, Marco Rubio doesn't say anything like that. And you'll hear his question, and I think, honestly, it disqualifies him to be Secretary of State. I
It's a
would
good
play this
point.
tape. Yeah, and I'm not sure. The question is so fucking bad. If I
But
could
not
make
only that, Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm glad we're going to watch this right now because I haven't seen it in a while. But as I recall, Marco Rubio seemed nervous when he's asking those questions, almost like he knows the answer and they're kind of like participating in a little kind of back and forth, almost like a play, right?
well, so yes, it's performative. That's the term
Yes.
I use in the article.
Yes.
It's performative. It's almost like, the friend confronted your husband, and he asked, "Okay, sure, she was in your room, but isn't it true that your wife sucks too? Doesn't your wife
No,
burn
you're
the?"
right. It's as if the husband was prompting the friend. Weren't you just there because your car broke down? Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Instead, uh, he attacks, in this case, the wife. In this case, the innocent party. That's what I'm saying. So, because do you know who else had been saying Russia had biolabs? I mean, Ukraine had biolabs
I
for
don't
years.
remember.
Russia,
Oh,
right?
yes, right. Of course, yes.
So
Putin said
Russia's
that.
official position through this general's work had been, because they weren't just guessing, right? They'd gotten documents when they invaded Ukraine, and they got documents. But before that, this has been like a, a discredited theory. So, and Russia, more than any country, I think, has a good reason to be very worried about bioweapons in Ukraine, right? I mean,
Sure. It's right next
it,
door.
it, you could say the world should be threatened, but Russia's got a special interest because they're right there. So watch how much Marco Rubio, given that, how much Marco Rubio sucks. And really, I know I'm saying very adamantly, I'm really pissed about this. This guy, especially when we're in a situation with a war with Russia, and we've had no contact with the Russians because of Blinken for a couple of years. I don't want this guy as head of our foreign policy. You see, I think that what the Trump administration should be doing is building bridges with Russia, right?
I agree.
Now, even if you're really skeptical of Russia, I think you'll see why I say Marco Rubio should not be Secretary of State. I really think it's disqualifying.
Weren't you surprised when Trump selected him? I didn't think they even, like Trump, I didn't think he liked him.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked, but see, I like you. I hadn't seen this Victoria-Nuland thing for a while, and I forgot about it. Kind of, it's back of mind.
Yeah.
Not forgot about it, but not. It
Yeah, the
wasn't.
details of it, right.
It wasn't seared in my memory.
Right.
And play it now.
Yeah.
See if you agree. Marco Rubio sucks. He should not be anywhere near the
Working with Adobe Acrobat AI Assistant,
Wait a minute. We got an Adobe ad. Sorry. We can't get through that, so we'll just let that play and then
Marco
we'll come
Rubio
back to
has
it.
no comment on Premiere or Photoshop.
Exactly. He's subscribing to Creative Cloud, I think. Here we go.
The way Putin has done as well. I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
Last question. I am certain that the Russians were looking at their reserves as a way to buffer sanctions. Do you know how, now that we've sanctioned the central bank along with others, do we have an idea of what percentage of their reserves are frozen or inaccessible to them?
Virtually all of them are now frozen. You notice that the country's been under currency controls for almost 2 weeks now, and the whole point of putting so many of these top 10 banks under sanctions is to make it impossible for them to get access to their cash in hard currency.
Thank you. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here and for everything that this.
Pretty crazy, right, Lee?
Right. I mean,
Ukrainians.
See why I'm adamant? I mean, he's basically, well, okay, there's Biolabs in Ukraine. You're admitting that now. But if anything bad happens, it's Russia, right? That's his question.
Well, but also, yeah, right. He prompts her to that, and she's like, well, the classic technique is to blame the other guy for what you're doing. It's like, wait a minute. Isn't that what you're doing right now?
Exactly right. I mean, it's a performative, it's all a setup. It's like, it's not a real question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, again, the news there is she's admitting Ukraine's got labs. So the follow-up would be, what are they doing? And why have you been denying it for years and blaming Russia? That's what I'm saying.
So, Lee, I'm a little concerned because, Marco Rubio, I agree, he's an idiot. That was a demonstration of his utter idiocy. How does Trump not know this? Why is he making him Secretary of State? I mean, I'm very positive about Trump. I really am incredibly happy that Kamala Harris did not win. But it's almost like, I don't know, how could he be doing all this stuff that's so great and then simultaneously have so many stupid decisions like Marco Rubio?
So I can't know Trump's mind, but if I was, if I had a chance to question him, I would ask him that, because that's what I can do. As a journalist, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not being facetious.
Right.
I mean, literally, we have no way to know. Trump hasn't said, well, the reason I like Rubio is this. So I'd have to be a mind reader, or I'd have to be a journalist with access to Trump. Like at a press conference, I'd go, I'd say, Marco Rubio was shameful in 2022 when Victoria admitted the existence of Biolabs. He had been denying the existence of Biolabs for years, lying to the American people, and Victoria Nuland admitted in testimony. And Marco Rubio could have followed up with a follow-up question to delve into that more. Instead, he blamed Russia. Because that's what I'm saying. Look, we're in a precarious situation. We've fomented a war with Russia, right? I mean, we're acting as a puppet master. We overthrew the government of Ukraine in 2014, and Victoria Nuland was an integral part of that, right?
Yes, with Andrei Telizhenko giving out cookies.
That's right, Andrei's idea. Again, she was going to have our bread.
Yeah.
No.
To the Ukrainians.
Yeah. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In that situation, a person continuing the anti-Russian narrative, when she's just admitted that the State Department had been lying, I mean... And,
listen, I agree with you and I appreciate the statement that you can't read Trump's mind, but Trump has been on the world stage now for kind of a long time. People who hate him can't even deny any longer he is presidential. He is like the president. And we've seen in the past, he's even said, like Bolton, right? John Bolton, he brought in because he said he's crazy and he wanted somebody crazy. Could he be maybe doing something like that with...
Well, again, I can't read his mind, but I know the answer to why Bolton came in.
Why?
Steve Bannon. So here's what I'm saying. And again, through your work in Hollywood and also in politics, nothing can prepare you for that world. And I'd say the world of Hollywood here. Because, you like, I'm just saying broadly, if you're like a normal person, you grew up watching TV and you see all kinds of people, right? On TV, and you don't know them. So you're in Hollywood now working at, let's say, visual effects, like we've both done, and you go to a party, and let's say you go to a party and you meet P. Diddy, now years ago.
I don't know what
No,
parties
no,
you go to.
I'm
Or on
really
set
serious.
or something, anything.
Yeah. Well, someone we now know is bad.
Right.
The first time you meet him at a party, you call your friends. You're like, "Do you know what I met last night?
Right.
Right? I was talking to P Diddy,
Right.
and he seems like a. And by the way, in that circumstance, he probably would seem like a good guy. I mean, he
Right.
would invite you to whore parties right
The
there,
freak off.
but right, but he'd be trying to hors d'oeuvres with you.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, you go to DC. Like someone once said, politics is like Hollywood with ugly people.
Right.
It's people you see on TV. Most people have seen Chuck Schumer a million times on TV,
Mm-hmm.
or Bill Browder, or whoever. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Or Jake Tapper, or whoever.
So you're like
So
starstruck or something.
that's kind of Star Trek,
Can be.
but yeah, that's fair. I mean, you go to a Georgetown party for the first time, and you meet Anderson Cooper. Let's say Cooper. Now, I've talked to Anderson Cooper. You know what? He's a nice guy. When you just like the first time you meet him, you're being a shallow interaction, right?
Yeah.
And so the way you know who to trust is other people who are on who you know will say, P Diddy seems okay. I'm sure he was nice when you met him, but stay away from the guy because I know.
Don't try the
things.
cocktails.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Trump had been. Do you know how many times Trump had been to D.C. before he was elected?
I think he said never.
No, I think 17 times ever in the city.
Okay.
Right, at his age and with his position as a.
It's like barely.
Well, right. So you go to Washington, and the name is put before you. Let's bring John Bolton in. So you don't know Bolton, right? Right. I mean, you're Trump. You're like, okay, I've seen the guy on TV, and Steve Bannon says, I don't know specifically what he said, but I'm sure he said exactly what Trump said. I'm sure he said. In other words, what I'm saying is Trump was probably repeating what he was told by Bannon.
Right. The thing that caused the decision. We need a crazy guy so that everybody thinks, oh my God, they're bringing in the crazy guy.
And so let me prove my point. It's Bannon. When I was hosting, when I worked for Breitbart under Bannon, they have a radio show on Sirius XM satellite radio, right? So I used to substitute host on that show, and I would pick my own guests.
Mm-hmm.
And that one day they had a list. Okay, you're gonna have John Bolton on.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't put him there because I don't like Bolton. And I said, what? I said, and the producer told me, they said, John Bolton's on every Thursday. That's our that's our rule basically. So I'm not guessing at this. Bannon had put John Bolton on the show, and he made him the mandatory guest every Thursday. Well, look, so you see what I'm saying? What
I
is
mean,
that?
Bannon is pushing him.
Right. He's not only pushing him, he's making him mandatory. Right? You see?
Yeah. Well,
And
where is Bannon in the Trump administration now? I feel like he's like shaking his hand at Mar-a-Lago and stuff, but he's obviously not so involved.
Right. Bannon burned those bridges, I think, by being a leaker. But basically, so I know a lot about Bannon because I work for him. So
Right.
who recommended Rubio? I don't know. But somebody like in that position was like, okay, do you know what we should get for Secretary of State? Rubio.
But this
No,
time Trump knows Rubio. Lee, excuse me for interrupting, but we're almost at the end of this segment, and I want to make sure that people know it's important to join us for the next segment and to sponsor Lee on patreon.com/Stranahan. That's where you're going to be able to see the mainstream media roundup, the legacy media roundup, and Lee is producing those. This is really cool how Lee does this. He's got the AI, what do you call it? Is it a voice clone, a voice print? The
AI Lee, basically,
Yeah.
I call it.
It's really great.
My old voice, take it from my old radio shows. where I had a lot of audio in good quality of me. So it's not perfect. I want to do the better one, but anyway, the thing I would urge people, I have two platforms now, Patreon and X. Like I don't even maintain a website right now, and here's why: I can do everything I need between Patreon and X. But one advantage of Patreon is I can post audio only clips. Now you can't do that on X right now. If I want to post a video, I can, right? But there's no way to post just audio. And the other thing is X is limited in length of our articles. Have you noticed that?
Well, I signed up for the version that lets you put long articles. You have to pay, but it gives you some other features.
No, it lets you put longer articles.
Oh, it's still limited? I haven't tried a
yes.
really long one. You're right. I have
Right.
only done like 2 pages.
Well, my work, I do a fair number of really long articles, and I can break it up. You could break it up into like split it and have two.
Yeah.
I think that's messy. So if an article's, and I often don't know if an article's going to fit on X until I paste it. It'll either say, it basically cuts it off. Then I have to go back in, So what I do is if it gives me a red warning message, right? Not a warning message about commies, but a red,
Red notice. Yeah.
Right. What I do is I go to Patreon, and Patreon doesn't have those limits. So what I'm telling people is this is an important subject. I think this is a really important subject. And I like to make I don't like to charge for those. And often it's kind of the way I figure it out. I go, is this something the public needs to know? And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't want to say this is a need to know story, very important about avoiding nuclear war. By the way, pay me.
I'm going to need that $3 when the fallout starts coming down, Lee. But let's do this. People are going to be able to join us right now on patreon.com/Stranahan. They're also going to be able to join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Lee, although I already have a million platforms, I have yet another platform now. I was just the other day allowed to start accepting subscribers on X. So thank you to the 2 subscribers. Now, the one technical issue is I can't do a live stream for subscribers only. So I will be posting the sponsor-only content to X just after it posts on the other live stream channels. But we're going to head over right now to the sponsor-exclusive segment. Stay with us, everybody. We've got a lot more to discuss with Lee Stranahan. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to the most sophisticated podcast inside